Good morning, Knoxville. It's almost agreement. I promised I'd start doing some interviews, so I've started doing some interviews. Today I have Monica Irvine. She's running for State Senate Seat 6, which is my district, in case you didn't already know that. So she's vying for my vote. She's running in the primary against Becky Massey, and then she will go against Dominica in the general when and if she gets there. So we're almost agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, check out Hollerboo 24. It's October 26th, Soapbox Derby Street Fair, rock and roll concert. If you want to race a car down Central with us, you should do it. It's a great time. If you want to come sell your wares, register as a venue that's open now. Again, October 26th, Hollerboo. Go to your favorite podcast provider, like, friend, follow, share. Text us to your friends, whatever you can do to help us out. That would be great. Stay tuned. I've already talked to Monica's direct opponent, Becky Massey. I'll have her in here the next week or so as well. It's early in the morning, and I'm drinking my coffee, so there's going to be a few yawns in this episode. Good luck, everybody. Okay, so Monica Irvine's here with me. She's running for Senate Seat 6 here in the state of Tennessee. I'm excited to have you. It'll be my first of this part of the cycle. So what I always like to do when I get new candidates, people I haven't met yet, is give me the 15-minute history of Monica Irvine.
Well, good morning, Seth, and good morning to your listeners. Thanks for having me. We're both trying to wake up this morning. So I am a Tennessee girl through and through. I was raised in Clinton, Tennessee, graduated from Clinton High School. And in fact, my little high school classes, or some of my high school classes, giving me an event next week. So excited about that. And then I moved to Knoxville when I was 18 and went to University of Tennessee, met my husband 30 some odd years ago. So we've been married just over 30 years. Well, it'll be 31 years this August. We have 3 boys. Each of our children have 1 child so far. So we've got 3 awesome grandkids and 2 girls and 1 little boy that was just born 4 months ago. And, that is so fun. And we're trying to get used to the extra energy needed to entertain grandchildren. We're still trying to get used to it. So my husband and I have owned restaurants our entire marriage, and we both have put a lot of sweat and hours and tears into those restaurants. Thankfully, over the last several years, a couple for my husband, several years for me, we are not in the restaurants as much as I'm never in the restaurant anymore. And but we've got great staff. We've always been blessed with long-term employees, and just have always been so blessed. But the restaurant business is hard. We have won some and lost some. We know what it's like to struggle with small business. It is not easy. But I've come to learn that I don't think there is an easy way to make money in America. If there is, I don't know anyone that knows the secret, and we sure don't know the secret. It just takes a lot of hard work. In addition to that, so our 2 older kids went through the Knox County public school system. Our youngest son started out in the Knox County public school system, and then when he was probably even in kindergarten, I started just feeling like I was supposed to homeschool this kid, but I didn't want to. I thought I would ruin his life. I just didn't think I was capable of it. But finally, I got the courage to pull him out and started homeschooling him, and homeschooled him through high school, and that really opened my eyes just to a lot of different options on educating our children. So I'm always excited to talk about that aspect. But also about 16 years ago, through homeschooling my son, I wanted to teach him a little bit more purposeful, teach him manners. I don't know what mother doesn't, but long story short, I started a company called the Etiquette Factory, and that has turned into a huge blessing in my life. I travel the country. I'm a keynote speaker at lots of conferences around the country. I teach parenting topics, raising children. I have a manners curriculum, pre-K through high school. I go into businesses and teach business etiquette. Just do a lot of things when it comes to teaching life skills, professionalism, customer service, lots of things. And then finally, some of my civic work. I've done lots of things, but a big passion of mine is the last 20 years, I'm the longest serving volunteer for Knox County Juvenile Court as a CASA volunteer. That stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. So basically, I investigate cases of child abuse, child endangerment, and that has been a very difficult assignment, but a very rewarding one. And then another passion of mine is fighting for the unborn. And so the last 5 years, I've been a board member of Tennessee Right to Life. That has taken me to the Capitol many times fighting for pro-life legislation. So that's your 15 minutes and probably more than you wanted to know.
No, I mean, if that's all I wanted to know, we could cut it off and we call it a show, and that's not super exciting. I personally have a restaurant background too. Spent most of my career in the restaurants, and I'm a small business owner as well. And it is a great feeling when you get to that point where you don't have to be there as much anymore. You can go play with other things, like do a silly podcast about local politics,
right?
Instead of being up and dealing with vendors and all that kind of stuff. Although my guy is on vacation this week, so this is a less involved week than I normally get to do. But nonetheless, it is an interesting spot to be in when you get that long-term staff like that. Yeah, he's celebrating I think next week is his 10th year working for us.
Awesome.
It's so crazy.
That's awesome.
Okay. And so, I got your flyer in the mail. You brought me another one too, which is always good because I can read things twice. What makes the jump? What goes from, you've got this juvenile court advocate, and you've got your businesses, and you've got your etiquette school, and you got all these different things going on. What says this year, this cycle, this time, I need to run for this particular seat? Yeah.
Great question. Really, probably now, well over a year ago, probably almost 2 years ago now, I guess. This year has gone by so fast, it's a blur. And I really did start I just kept getting a thought that I needed to consider to run for an office. Every time that thought popped into my mind, I was quickly pushing it out of my mind.
Really, I know that feeling.
Yes, just the last thing that I was interested in doing. But I've learned a few things that when you cannot stop thinking about something, and especially when it's something that you're really not interested in doing, that for me, 100% of the time, it comes from the Lord. But I listened enough that I would pop open my computer from time to time and just look, like, what is it? School board? Is it county commission? Just what exactly am I supposed to do, if I'm really supposed to do that? And nothing really hit home. And I just would pay attention to what seats were coming open and tried to pay a little closer attention. And but the year progressed, and back in February last year, I got word that Senator Massey, my opponent, had co-sponsored a bill that was going to drastically expand abortions in Tennessee, making more exceptions to abortions.
Right, number one on your list on your flyer. If everybody's got the flyer, you could follow along.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, the truth is, it was a triggering event, and so Senator Massey graciously met with me. Was very open to talking about her decision, which I appreciated so much, and basically explained to me how she had changed her mind on this issue of making more exceptions for abortion. And the truth is, Seth, I realize that there are Republicans that think there should be more exceptions in Tennessee for abortion. I'm just not one of them. And something that is so foundational to who I am and what I believe, it is something that I'm very passionate about protecting every life. And so after a discussion, I won't go into those details. I can if you want, but after that discussion, I realized that Senator Massey just no longer represented my views on this very important issue that I hold so dear and feel such a sacred responsibility to protect the unborn in Tennessee. And so I asked Senator Massey to remove her name from this piece of legislation. I gave her time to consider removing her name from that piece of legislation. She didn't, and it was a triggering event. It didn't mean that in that moment I decided this is what I'm going to run, but I sure was leaning towards that maybe this is what I was being prepared to run for. Over the next couple of months, so I could feel better about this decision, I wanted to take a deeper dive into Senator Massey's voting record. And literally, I spent a whole lot of boring time on the Tennessee Assembly website.
I know all about that.
And that is it's not an easy website to maneuver. It's really, I think it's such a disservice to all of us voters.
I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. That's one of the biggest struggles that I've had. It's like, so whatever bill number, blah, 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 pops up, and I'm like, okay, let's figure out what's going on with this thing. And if you're not a well-versed, deep dive person and understands like more the process really than reading what's on there, because it's like, well, this is here, this is in subcommittee, this is doing this. And like, if you don't know the flow and how a bill works, you really don't know what they're doing at that point until all of a sudden, okay, this thing's cleared. Now we get the Secretary of State and maybe WBIR will do their, hey, new bills, new laws going into effect July 1, and here's how it works. And it's like, okay, well, I missed the whole process.
That's right.
And I follow it, and I still can't follow it.
It's hard. And the whole idea is I am transparency.
Okay.
As constituents, we've got to know what bills
Sure,
we're voting
absolutely.
on, why. And so anyway, as I did that, I kept finding bill after bill after bill. That was pretty shocking to me how my representative had voted on it.
Okay, so how do I word this? This brings up more of a philosophical question. I don't want to get into an abortion debate. That's not really important. That's one of those. Most people are pretty firm where they're at, so I'm not going to try to change any minds with my version versus your version versus whatever version. But on a more philosophical level, as far as government and constituency interaction, this is where I get this is one of my biggest complaints about representative government as we use it. But so, you have a couple times on your flyer where you mentioned things like, as far as things that you disagree with Becky on. That's most of the flyer is, which I think is great. I really do. I really appreciate that format of, this isn't a personal attack on Becky. This is what she did, and this is what I would have done in a similar situation. If you agree with the way I would have done it, then you vote for me. I think that's a wonderful way to go about doing a flyer because it's transparent, like you said. But the question I have is that, we could stick on the abortion topic a little bit, is that now, your reason to jump in and oppose Becky is that this issue is very important to you. Is there what tells you that is a District 6 issue that agrees with you?
Well, over the last 10 months, every door I've knocked on that I've spoken to, I have been reassured time and time again.
Including the exceptions?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'll get a poll. Someone sent me a poll the other day out of Vanderbilt and said that here's a poll and shows that a lot of conservative Republicans are out of touch with what people want. And I'm like, I've been polling for 10 months. And so when I first started polling, the first 5 months, I literally asked a survey question, 2 survey questions every door I knocked on. That opened to me and I had a conversation with. And so the first question I asked was, and granted, I'm knocking on conservative Republican doors or Republican doors.
Likely Republican voters. Right,
that's right. And so I'd say out of these 3 issues, I know you care about all of them. If you're a Republican, you care about all of these. But out of these 3 issues, what is the most important issue to you? Protecting the unborn, protecting your Second Amendment rights, or protecting parental authority, such as school choice or non-mandated vaccines, etc. And 8 out of 10 times it was protecting the unborn is the most important issue to me. Now, sometimes, of course, Seth, we would talk about it. Once they said that, then we would talk about exactly where they stand. And I would be lying if I didn't tell you that, yes, sometimes people would say, yeah, I think we need some exceptions. But 8 out of those 10 times, no exceptions except in the life of the mother, because so many of these people just believe it's a foundational issue of whether you believe it's a baby or not a baby. And so I have been so buoyed up and reassured because I think social media and pollsters and people who are really into trying to get Republicans in office have said to me, Monica, you may need to tamper down your pro-life stand. I'm not sure it's a winning issue anymore. I just believe we have gotten so bad at talking about it that
I agree
is
with
our
that.
problem.
I agree that this desire to not have the conversation because it's not a fun conversation to have is not a helpful way to go about it. But I don't know, because I can acknowledge that I would love to see your numbers if you don't mind sharing those with me in the future. But I could acknowledge that it is likely that most likely Republican voters would probably lean towards that's a top issue. But District 6 is a big district.
It is.
And at least the District 18/District 4 and County Commission portion of it is leaning more center-left, if anything, over the last 2 or 3 cycles. So I would have a hard time without doing my own version of polling, and polling ain't cheap. Not thinking that I could. I have a hard time believing that the majority of District 6 is exceptionless.
Well, what's interesting, it depends on where you are in District 6. Definitely right where you and I live, definitely going to be more moderate. It just is. But this district goes north,
I would
south.
I think the South Knoxville, the more center-south Knoxville would be even further left, where the south-south Knoxville would be more right. That would be my guess at it.
I just find as you go out from the center of this literal district, you just find more and more farther right. I don't like to call it farther right. I know that's what you're calling it, but it's just whether or not.
I mean, it's at least on this issue, it's further right. I would think that would be an accurate statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even for a lot of people, as I talk about it and ask them, I'm like, so knowing where I stand, is this an issue that is a deal breaker if you and I disagree on exceptions? And the answer is no. Want to look at the whole picture, and that's what is also fascinating is how interested they are in all of these conservative issues. There are many of them.
Right, because I can 100% believe that you can have people that you'll knock on their door. Because one of my favorite stories, I believe it was Jennifer Owens who was telling me about it, but I can't remember. They were door knocking for school board. Again, I apologize if it's not Jennifer, but the story is in the record if you guys want to go back and find it. They're knocking on doors for school board, and somebody asked them, "Where are you at on abortion?" Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm running for school board.
Right.
I don't want abortions in school, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I can 100% believe that that's a top issue for a lot of people, because I think it is. It is probably one of the most amazingly continuously divisive issues, at least in my lifetime, that has always been. It's always been a top issue one way or the other.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so no matter where you stand on this issue, how conservative, exceptions, no exceptions, a few exceptions, most conservatives, most Republicans know that the abortion industry will never stop. They want full access to abortion through 9 months. They do. And so there's no stopping. The abortion industry is going to continue to chip away at every part that they get. If they can get a little bit back. And so at some point you're like, so are we going to continue to give to this industry that profits from destroying life?
No, that's how we treat all industry as a government.
Is that what we're
all
going to
industries do? All industries are going to take and take until we stop
as
them.
Republicans, what we're going to just we're going to stop it here and draw the line. We're going to stop it here and draw the line. To me, there's no lines when it comes to life.
To me, that's the definition of a conservative. Anyway, that's
right.
What are we conserving? We're conserving the thing that we were, and so that any time that the line is crossed, you're breaking the conservative value at some way, shape, or form. So let's move on a little bit to the parental. I can't remember your
parental
verbiage.
Rights
parental rights, school choice, stuff like that. I don't know. I get lost. I get lost personally. I got 2 kids in Knox County school systems. I'm not particularly happy with it. I, like you, at least less like you, because I'm probably not going to pull the trigger on it, but the thought has crossed my mind of homeschooling my kids. But what I find interesting on that topic, well, we'll come back to that in a second. I have a problem. My problem with schools, and it's private or public, it doesn't really matter, is like at some point at some point the state is going to, if we're going to use a public school system, and we're going to argue that a public school system is necessary for the continuation of our, of the education of our youth to get us another generation of workers and productive citizens and all that kind of stuff. If the state is the arbiter of this system, it's going to be a state-first system, meaning it's going to be supportive of state values and or state agendas, for lack of a better word. And so no matter how we break it down, a public school is going to be that. What I find interesting about it is that the more conservative side is trying to get out of that, where in a state like Tennessee that is very strongly conservative controlled, you would think you'd want to keep the kids in the public schools to keep that agenda being taught, which is part of the argument, because it's part of it's like LGBTQ and woke stuff sneaking their way into schools and stuff like that is part of what some of us are fighting. I know that's one of your issues for sure. And so I get it. That's a long way of saying I don't know where I'm at on it. I'm open to the premise of it. But one of the things I found interesting is I was doing some research on school choice and stuff like that. Homeschool families hate it. And they were going to be one of the beneficiaries as far as I understood it. And it's actually it ended up dying all the way, but in one of the last versions that went to the floor, as I understood it, they pulled the homeschoolers on request got pulled out of being included in those who were going to get the funding.
Well, that's right, because homeschoolers don't trust the government, and they don't want the government anywhere near their children. But
wouldn't the assumption being that within a couple of years that the state would then be in private schools, and then the whole point of school choice and a voucher program or anything like that would be moot, because now the state of Tennessee holds the purse strings and says, okay, well, you can't have this voucher money for these students for your private school unless you teach it the way we want it taught.
So, of course, Seth, that is one of the biggest dangers, and that is why this legislation, whenever it is written, whenever we finally do get a version, that those of us who care so much about private schools and homeschoolers having autonomy, is that it is written very carefully. I've looked at many other states' school choice legislation. Not that I'm an expert on on legal written documents, but I really like the Utah's school choice piece of legislation, because it really protects autonomy of private schools and homeschoolers.
How long has Utah been running this system?
I think just 2 full years so far. So, here's the thing, as you and I just said, government is always going to overreach, always, right? And so we are always going to fight to keep control, to keep individual rights. But at some point, our society decided that it was in our society's best interest to have an educated populace for the reasons you said. We've got to have citizens that are able to be productive, right? And so, as somebody's got
to run the nursing home when I move in.
That's right. So our state decided that it is in our vested interest as a society that we educate our younger generation, and so our state has determined that it costs between $8,000 and $12,000 per student to publicly educate them. I'm sure it probably even goes a little wider than that, the spectrum. It has to do with diagnoses of children. Do they need special teachers with them, ratio of population, etc. But basically, so Governor Lee has and Department of Education has said, okay, we're going to set aside. We know it at least cost our state about $8,000 to educate all children, if not more. So we're going this money that has been earmarked to educate Sammy. We're going to allow Sammy's parents to take that $8,000 if they determine that the school that he is publicly zoned to attend is not meeting his needs. We're going to allow them to take that money and find a situation that better meets his needs. But the only way I know to talk about this school choice is to tell you a couple of brief examples. I was knocking on a door, met some grandparents who had custody of their 2 grandchildren, 6th, 7th grade, right here at Bearden Middle School. And the grandfather was like, our granddaughter is thriving. She loves school. It seems to be going well. Our grandson, not so much. He's on the autism spectrum. He's very high functioning. And so they just, put him into the regular classroom. But his problem is he cannot handle that large of classroom environment, all the noise, just all the different things that go into 25 kids per classroom. And that grandfather's like, we would love to have an alternative, to use that money to find a better situation for him, smaller classroom size, maybe homeschool him, and then use that money to get him some therapy. I met another mother, went to, her son goes to a high school here in Knox County, came home, her freshman son came home with a book report assignment. When she saw the book that he was assigned to get and read, she did not like that book. She did not want her son to be exposed to the material in that book. And so she sent an email to the English teacher and said, hey, this book really doesn't fit our family standards, and could we get an alternative reading assignment? Teacher said, oh, well, you're going to have to see the principal about that. She handles that situation. So it wasn't just as email the principal. It's like, come to the school. I'm sitting there thinking, how difficult can we make this on parents? This mother just so happens is a stay-at-home mom, but had she been a working mom, like, how difficult is that? So she went, met with the principal, and it was a difficult 30 minutes, according to this mother. Finally, they were going to give her an alternative reading assignment. However, the principal warned her about something that I have since found out through a county commissioner or school board member that is inaccurate. But this principal actually told this mother, it looks like your son is on track to be in honors English next year. And I want to warn you that when he's in honors English, he cannot opt out of any reading assignment. So the mom goes home, pulls up the reading assignments for that year in honors English, and there were a couple of books that she did not want her son to read. And so it's like, when did their authority supersede parental authority? And when did they make it so difficult? Back 150 years ago, when public school education was implemented, when we started really understanding the significance that we owe this to our citizens, our society, for a lack of a better way to describe it, moral standards kind of was pretty much shared. But today, there's such a spectrum of what we all.
Well, to be fair, when the U.S. school system got started, it was to build soldiers and factory workers, and that was it.
Okay, we've been depending on someone to educate our children back in the early days of America.
Sure,
when
but
farmers and communities,
the organized education system run by the state was always to build soldiers and factory workers. That's what it's always done, and I would argue that it's still kind of here to do that today, but that's a whole separate little subset of conversation. And sure, if all I want to do is put a kid in a uniform and send him off, or have him build widgets for the rest of his life, the need for a diverse education is a little different than it is in the society that we live in today, which is much more complicated and much more integrated with a lot more different things going on. I'm not going to defend I'm not trying to oppose the parents' choice thing, but there's this almost agrees with you on some level. There's a structural issue with the school systems as they sit now because of their historical intent.
Well, so yes, maybe so, but at the end of the day, parents could trust that their children had a certain level of safety, integrity at school. I take a group of kids to one of our local high schools each morning right now, and as I was asking the kids, well, so do you have teachers that you consider promote agendas? And like Mrs. Irvine, we have a lot of teachers that have the gay pride flag hanging in their classroom, or the transgender flag, and which teachers are trying to just be very welcoming to to different aspects of students, and try to promote those kind of things. And it's like, so when did our teachers take upon themselves to think that they had the authority to push political and social agendas? When I was in middle school, I remember asking an English teacher who she was going to vote for in a presidential election that was coming up. And she looked at me and she said, Monica, honey, it wouldn't be appropriate that I tell you that. That's something that teachers just don't share with their students. I remember feeling kind of guilty that I'd ask a question I didn't know. I'd crossed some kind of line by asking who my teacher was going to vote for. And I think how far we've come to where now that's not even, well, by some, it's not even considered where their authority ends or where does their authority begin and the parents,
where does theirs end and the parents begin?
Thank you.
Which I agree. I agree with that, which brings up some interesting stuff. But to me, this is my philosophy as a parent is that's my job. My job is to say those people exist. You're going to deal with them for the rest of your life, and you're going to deal with them in authoritative figures. Your boss might be an uber liberal or whatever we're going to call it for conversation's sake, and you've got to navigate a political line at work, even though it's not a political workplace, of dealing with okay, well, I'm going to just keep my mouth shut on how I feel about this topic because it's not integral to the job, and my opinion on it is going to be negatively impacted on me by my boss or whatever like that. It's just that's life, and so isn't it our job as parents to teach our kids how to navigate those things, because that is going to be a continual issue for them for the rest of time?
Absolutely. But Seth, as a child, Seth, when you have someone in authority over your child, it is not appropriate that person in authority over your child tries to influence them on a political or social issue such as that. It's not appropriate.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree necessarily that it's, I don't know. Okay. I mean, I get where you're coming from on it. And again, this is a fun, sticky issue, and I have lots of opinions on it. But one of the things that I struggle with personally when we get into this parental authority conversation is what it feels like to me a lot of the times. It's parents who aren't willing to do the work themselves, who are trying to pawn off the censorship, for lack of a better word, to somebody else. They're trying to get
disagree with that.
They're trying to get the school to do their moral duty to their child. They're saying, "Hey, I have this moral line for my kid. You do it for me because I'm not willing to put in the time to do it myself." And that doesn't seem appropriate to me either.
It's not, Seth. I agree with you. Listen, we have so many parents honestly not parenting, and they leave it to the school because they're not teaching their children character development, and they're not teaching their children behavioral skills, and they're not holding their children accountable. And then they expect the teachers to fill in. And teachers are blessed teachers. Their hands are tied. They've got all of these kids coming who don't even understand the concept of respect and authority and obedience. And because it's a lack of parenting today, because we are so disengaged, many are so disengaged with their children.
What is going on? Sorry, I had a little faux pas there. I forgot.
You're good.
I had an old track that was still on this thing. I don't. My problem with this is I don't know the governmental solution to this problem, because I don't know that I agree that school choice is going to fix that. I certainly don't think, and this is one of the things that I have really fun arguments with people on, because the way it's written, if I pull my kid out of Knox County Schools lose money. Doesn't matter what I do with them. And the way the argument likes to be thrown around is that, well, if we do this school choice thing, it's going to take money out of public schools. It's like, well, I took my kid out of school. It takes money out of public schools. It has nothing to do with the choice part of it. I choose to take my kid to Kentucky because we moved. I took money out of Knox County Schools. It doesn't really matter. That's one of the things I like. It turns into such a convoluted argument because it's like, because I'll agree in principle that I don't know that, I don't know. I don't know that, what is it, $700 million is enough money for Knox County Schools or not. I don't know. I don't know what the right number is supposed to be. I don't know what we should be paying teachers. Like, we had this new thing come out this year. I don't get it. Like, I saw a stat that said in the state of Tennessee, household income, 2 parents, 2 kids, should be in like the $170,000 a year range. That's an incredible number, and that's awful. Like the old, that's the old, what's his face? Who's the money guy that's been on the radio forever? Anyway, it's like the old 50-30-20 rule, 50% spending, 30% savings, 20% mortgage or something like that, which nobody lives that way anymore. But still, $170,000, which I think is an increase. But I was reading, Sycamore Institute put a thing out. I was reading through it the other day, Knox County is above average for the state at $68,000 median household income a year. How do you live in Knox County for $68,000 right now?
Right.
How does the tax revenue get it, and how, I don't understand, I cannot wrap my head around how this works. $700 million sounds like such a huge number, but 60,000 kids and blah, 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 you do all the math and you work it out. I don't know how to fix this, and I don't know that choice is a solution either.
Well, let me say this. Let
me finish.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I apologize. And I don't. The state can't force me to be a good parent. They never can, and they never will. And so, if we agree that a public option for educating our kids, because good and bad parents are going to exist, and we need something to help some of these kids get through their childhood and get to adulthood and hopefully break free from the bad pattern that may have been their parents, and we can have a new and wonderful, productive member of society moving forward. We can't legislate parents to be good parents. We can't pay teachers enough to be good teachers, really. That's part of the problem. That's part of the problem to me. And then, because even in the private schools, the complaints that teachers are underpaid. So, this seems like such an untenable solution to me, and choice doesn't necessarily make it any better, in my opinion.
Well, I guess I'm not naive enough to think choice is going to fix everything, of course. And I also, hopefully, am not naive enough to think that if we do pass school choice, which is what I do want, that there's not going to be unintended consequences of that. There just will, right? Because you just don't know all of the things that will come. But I believe that we are very capable of finding solutions to every problem. But I always believe that it starts with transparency. I'll give you an example. I went into a guidance counselor's office, and we were talking about some of the things that guidance counselor has to teach here in Knox County. And she showed me behind her was a shelf, and it had all of these 3-ring binders on the shelf. Like, I didn't count them, but it looked like about 15 of them. And they were the thick ones, the 2-inch or 3-inch binders. And she said, well, Monica, do you see this, the shelf behind me? She goes, that is the newest anti-bullying, and this was a couple years ago. This is the newest anti-bullying program that I've been asked to implement in our schools. And she said, so she pulled one off the shelf and she opened it, and it was just full of just, probably 200-300 pages of just text print. And she said, and she kind of flipped the pages, and she says, there might be some brilliant information in this notebook. Do you think I'm ever going to have time to what? I'm supposed to read it? Am I supposed to read all of these 3-ring binders? She said, and then she told me how much she was told they spent on it, which I don't want to quote it because it might be wrong. It was an enormous amount of money. And it's just, there is so much waste. And transparency, Knox County Schools thinks they're transparent. They're not. Transparency means that the public can see exactly where your money is going, not just teacher education or continued learning, but exactly what are we spending money on and how are we spending it? Because it's healthy for all of us.
I have to defend Knox County Schools for a second, because it's not really their choice. It would be your job when you get there, and I do think that's one of the issues. And as we're discussing this, mm-hmm. I will present you with an alternate solution. You can think about it and make a decision later.
Okay.
But how about we just take the state of Tennessee out and let Knox County run its own schools?
Well,
because I put to you, like, why is it important that a numerical standard is equal for a kid that's graduating from a Memphis high school, a Nashville high school, Roane County High School, and a Knox County High School? What value is that to Tennessee at large, the United States at large, that there is some unified answer that a 3.7 GPA from X school in whatever random county in Tennessee is the same as another?
It's not. Then
why do we say, what's the point of putting a centralized system in place?
I'm not going to be able to answer that question really educated, Seth. I'm just not going to. But what I will tell you is that I do believe, our state government is in charge of making sure that we are constitutionally aligned. We do have school boards. They make tremendous decisions on how their school is going to be run. I think we need to give principals more autonomy to be able to hold their teachers accountable. There are so many levels to the bureaucracy of how we run Tennessee schools. And anytime you tie people's hands, when you tie teachers' hands, principals' hands, school board's hands, then we don't get things accomplished, and it takes so long to accomplish anything. So I think those are really important issues that, like you, I think we need to look into.
Excellent. Okay, let's move off schools for a little bit. I got a couple more things and we're running out of time. The fourth one on your little flyer here that I was reading through is Senate Bill 2464, giving illegal state benefits. I would like your working definition for the word illegals as far as this goes.
People that are here undocumented, unlawfully, or they have come into the States, they have claimed asylum, and they have not shown up for their asylum court date. Those that never had any contact with. So I went and spent 2 weeks down on the border in El Paso. And I watched the process with my own two eyes about how we handle a lot of people coming across the border. And so those that want to get caught, that want to get fingerprinted because they want to claim asylum and then they want to have an asylum court date. They come across the border. They're housed. They come across the border because we actually bus them across the border. Then they're delivered to an NGO. That NGO feeds, houses, takes them to the doctor, even to the dentist. All of that for free to them for however long it takes to get them to be, quote, documented as far as fingerprinted. And so once they help them make an appointment, once they make an appointment, they get a piece of paper. They get asked, so where do you want to go in America? Do you have any family here? And so basically, they are told to tell wherever they want to go. So if they've heard that New York City is the most friendly city to illegal immigrants, then that's where you should go. And so they'll say, oh, I've got family in New York City. Okay. So they make an asylum court case in New York City and give them a piece of paper. And that piece of paper allows them to travel anywhere in the United States legally, bus, plane, car. And so what happens, though, is that over 90% of them never show up to that asylum court that has been set for them. And I looked at the court dates on their pieces of paper. They were anywhere from 3 months away to as long as 16 months away. And so once they miss that asylum date, then they have already broken the law by not showing up or making any contact with the court. So I don't believe that we should give benefits to anyone who's here that's not supposed to be here.
Okay, expand on benefits, because on the flyer it's trade licensing, and there's another one that allows in-state tuition.
So benefits are benefits that we give citizens. If you live in the state of Tennessee and you want to be a plumber, you've got to apply for a plumber's license and you've got to be licensed. But that is a benefit that you get to do your business in Tennessee, just like a driver's license. A driver's license is a license to drive your car. Those are benefits that we give to citizens and people that are here legally so that they can be in alignment with the law. And so that if you're not in alignment with the law, you are being unlawful. And so what happened is our state assembly ruled that giving trade licensing was not going to be considered a state benefit anymore. Once they made that ruling, then those who were illegally here could apply and get those licenses.
Personally, I don't believe I don't believe that trade licensing should exist in the first place, so I don't really have an issue.
Because you just don't believe in the regulating of those trades.
Yeah, I mean, because what like my wife's a nurse, and you spend 6 years through college and all that kind of crap, and then you take all the tests that you take in school, and then you have to take another test with the state that says that you learned all the things that you just took the test on for college. Seems a little redundant to me.
I do believe we should have universal licensing in a lot of areas. I agree with that. It's just a way for bureaucracies to make money.
Sure, I mean, because like it doesn't it doesn't prove that you know how to do the job. It doesn't protect me, the citizen. I don't have any more or less recourse if you have a license or not. It doesn't change anything from like what. Anyway, that's a whole separate thing.
So the next one, as far as the in-state tuition, so that was really concerning the DACA kids. And so, listen, of course, I have a heart for kids that are brought across, our borders, no fault of their own. They were minors at the time, and so they are in a really hard spot. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's appropriate that we're going to give the benefit of in-state tuition. That's a privilege. That's a state benefit we give to the citizens of Tennessee. And so we're not going to give a kid that has an address and lives in Arizona in-state tuition in Tennessee. It's a benefit of Tennessee. And so that was a benefit that Senator Massey voted on to give those kids in-state tuition. I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay. I follow your logic on it. I just, I don't care about trade licenses, so that doesn't bother me at all. But, if you have an address and you live in Tennessee, whether you, I guess, live here legally or not, you're still a Tennessean, I guess. But I guess not. I get what you're saying.
Well, the question is, what people want to know is, so the number one issue on every door that I knock on, if you say just of all the issues that you're most concerned about, what is number one? 9 out of 10 times it is an open border. And so, of course, as you know, it is a federal issue. It is our president and our federal government's responsibility to secure our borders of the United States. So, but because they're not doing their job, states are trying to figure out what can we do because our federal government has let us down. Is there anything we can do?
The state of Tennessee can make it less attractive.
That's right. And then that's what that's about. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get it. I follow it. I thought that's another fun, complicated one. Mm-hmm. I was curious. That was the perfect answer, though. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people talk on stuff that isn't their job, what they're asking for.
Yeah.
And that was well answered because I hate if you or your surrogates knock on my door and tell me something that your candidate's going to do that their job title won't have the capability of doing, I'm automatically not voting for you. That is a guaranteed. You are not going to get my vote because it's
just playing with words.
Well, it is, and it's dishonest to say the least. But what it is, it's the implication of, well, this matters to you. If the 9 out of 10 conservative doors that you've knocked on, or right-leaning voters, or whatever the list gets generated from, are telling you this is a top issue for them, then it's very. What's the word I'm looking for here? There is strong incentive for you to say something along the lines of,
relevant.
I will do this thing. I will do this thing in this job. And 9 out of 10, I will say 999,999 out of a million don't know that. Don't know that it's not your job as a state senator to address said issue, because that's one of my hopes in the show is I'm trying to get people to understand whose job does what. Mm-hmm. Because I disagree with you wholeheartedly on the school board thing. I think Knox County Schools, the actual elected body of the school board, I think that is a smoke show for us citizens to think that we have local involvement. The state senate and the state legislature do 99% of the things that matter in the schools, at least. Sure, our policy on, snow days and stuff like that is a school board issue, and that's not important. But when we're talking about schools, we're talking about educating, how we're educating, what kind of money is being spent on education. That is,
I agree with you,
barely a decision of the most impactful thing the school board does as far as what happens in our schools is to hire a superintendent. And the way that superintendent wants to run the schools is really the number one thing that the school board does in the schools, to me personally.
So, question for you on that: Do you think the superintendent should be elected?
No, because we are idiots and we elect dumb people. It's just that's just the truth. We I would guess where you stand on the presidential election race right now. We don't need to talk about the details of it, but again, in a lot of polling, that there's 70+% of Americans who would rather any other two candidates be running right now than these two. If we had an option on the ballot in November, I'd love to see it. If we had an option of neither, I would be curious how many we'd get. I haven't voted for a Republican or Democrat for president in my adult life. I probably won't. I'll throw away my vote and vote for the other guy. Whatever kind of fun arguments people like to throw at me, it's we are not producing good people. We're not producing the best of the best. That's just the reality of it. And if this repeat go around isn't a clear indicator of how terrible we are at selecting candidates for president, and how terrible the system is at promoting candidates for president, I don't know what else is. This is just particularly awful in my opinion, because we now have an obvious corrupt guy who is currently president with a convicted criminal, and one of those two is going to be the president for the next 4 years. Both of them are 80-something years old by the time this is all said and done, and I don't know. I'm getting up there, but the life that an 80-year-old has led versus the life that I have led are two different universes, and I think that's one of the biggest problems, especially in our federal government. Everybody's so damn old. I
had a guy.
It's been a minute, but last time I looked, this was a couple years ago, but I think the average age in the U.S. Senate was 68. And then the U.S. House a little bit lower, but it's still upper 50s.
Well, I was thrilled at the door yesterday. Some little old man said when he met me, he goes, "I'm so glad that young people are running for election." And I was like, well, I love you now. If you think I'm young, then we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like for when Ward was running and for Commission 4 and I interviewed him on it, I was like, I'm excited. Somebody's younger than me. Mm-hmm. Like, this is somebody younger than me running for these offices. And again, I think that's an educational issue. I think there's all sorts of parts and pieces in there. All right, so one of my fun favorite topics, we'll close on this one, is age of consent. You have an issue here. You're a strong Second Amendment promoter. I am a strong Second Amendment person. I like my guns. I don't think it's any of your business what and how many I have. That's a separate story, or where I put them. But I have a lot of issues with age of consent because it's a moving number. For example, I mean, you have two items in here that are age of consent conversations. It's about parental control over kids getting vaccines with or without their permission.
Right.
And then there's another one in here. We have an open carry. Tennessee is an open carry state, or a concealed carry, constitutional carry, I guess is what the word is. But it starts at 21 instead of 18. The issue you take with Massey is that she kept it at 21 instead of moving it down to 18 where you believe it belongs. I don't know what the number is, and I'm really frustrated with this. This is one of those things I get, like, so you can drive at 16, you can take on, you can go to war at 18, you can't drink or smoke or do this or this or that. Like, I don't understand what the number is supposed to be, because to me, the fundamental issue at play here is the age of consent is when are you old enough to make your own decisions? Now, I understand that it's going to be unique to every single individual all the time, but we have to have some sort of standard in place. I think. I agree with the premise. If 18 is the number, if 21 is the number, whatever. I don't care necessarily what it is, but I cannot stand this moving figure. Driving was not a good example. I apologize for bringing that one. But what was it? 12 was the vaccine one prior to now?
I guess it depends. It's really 14 in Tennessee because we have the. It's not 14 now, so it is a moving target. Exactly what you said. Because, for instance, we just passed a bill in 2023, Janice Bowling's bill, where you cannot vaccinate a child a minor, which right now is under the age of 18. So it is 17 and under is considered a minor in Tennessee. And so you can't vaccinate them without parental consent, without prior parental consent. And so the problem is, I agree with you. We have to have a standard. Right now, you are a legal adult at the age of 18. If we can send you across the world to protect freedom across the world, or
that's not even the top one to me. It's like you can take on huge debt with college or otherwise. You can get married, which could probably be a mistake at 18 or 19. You could do a lot of things at 18 or 19, but you can't have a cigarette. You can't smoke. You can't drink.
Well, so it's one of those things where
you can't carry your gun.
Well, is drinking and smoking a cigarette a constitutional right, or is that a privilege? And so, that's an argument that probably we could have a long discussion about. And so when I look at rights, Seth, I look at the Constitution. The Second Amendment is our constitutionally protected right. And so that right adheres to me when I become an adult as far as the Second Amendment. And so drinking, though, I don't see in the Constitution anything about drinking. And so is it a privilege? Is it a constitutional right?
What was the 18th and the 21st Amendments, right?
That could be argued, but no, it does not say drinking anywhere in the Constitution.
We didn't have the prohibition and then the repeal of the prohibition?
Well, that's Yes. Okay, we did. Yeah. But I just mean that you have a constitutional right to drink at the age of 18. But yeah, it is legal. So we could argue that about whether that is good or not. Just like driving, is it really good for 16-year-olds to be driving?
Well, I mean, I agree that there's nothing on driving in the Constitution.
Here's what I worry about with the age of consent is I worry about the other side continually trying to lower the age. There is a lot of reasons why that's happening, and I think all of them are motivated by really bad motivation. Like, I literally see, what's the age of consenting to transgender therapy? What is the age of consent to having a sexual relationship with a, quote, adult? It is trying to, there's organizations trying to reduce that there is no there is no limit to when someone can choose to be in a sexual relationship with anyone. There are very evil and wicked people trying to reduce the age of consent for very bad purposes. And so I do think we have to have a standard. What are we protecting? And I believe that children are children when they're under the age of 18. And I don't believe a child can be responsible.
But so with my parental authority, because I'm the same way. Like I word this terribly just for the shock of it, because it's on purpose. I own my children; they're mine. I'll do with them as I please. It's my business. That's none of your business. It's none of the state's business. Until you cross the line of abuse. Sure, if we get, but that's a gray term, because I think I know the answer to what you're going to give me to what I'm about to say. It's like, well, if I have the parental authority and my kid feels a way, and I want to support that feeling of a way that could include medical intervention, you're going to tell me that's not my right. But you're also going to tell me that you believe in parental control, and
absolutely.
And so. I have and again, I understand this is a gray line thing, because it is, because I have friends who had what now standard might consider an abusive father, where it was a strict father, a strict parent who was this is how we do things in this household, and if you don't, there are punishments, and some of those punishments include physical. Mm-hmm. And depending on who you ask, some would call that abuse, and some would call that parenting.
Well, I've been investigating cases of child abuse for 20 years, and there are lines, and I would sometimes go into a home, and I did not like the way they were parenting. I thought, to me, it was almost, if not crossing a line of abuse, but the legal standard. They were not crossing the line, like using, wooden paddles and leave marks on their butt.
I mean, my mom went at me with the kitchen spoon.
That's right. But so the answer is, can you leave a mark? Well, where can you leave a mark? Can you leave a mark on the buttocks, or can you leave a mark on the legs? There are determinations in that. When I go into a home the past 20 years, if I walked into a home and I was required to open drawers, open closets, I had to literally investigate the home. And if I had easy accessibility to pornography in the home, where it was clear that kids could easily assess the pornography in the home, I had to report that to the court as possible child abuse, because we know that when a child is exposed to those things, especially young children, that it literally, we have data that shows it changes the development of their mind. Just like when a child witnesses domestic violence in the home, it literally changes the development of their mind. So, there are standards with data that backs it on what children can be exposed to that alters their normal, natural way to develop. And so now it's like I used to reported it to the courts about pornography being in the home that children have access to. And now we're discussing pornographic material on the shelves of our schools. My mind cannot comprehend how far we've traveled in literally 5 to 10 years. It's frightening to me how we continue to lower the standard of what we think children should be exposed to and what we consider the age of consent.
That's what it's interesting to me. I love the book conversation in the schools. I haven't come across, but it doesn't mean they're not there.
They're there. You need to know that.
I don't, but again, personally, Again, what's the Supreme Court statement on pornography? As I'll know it when I see it. It's not a very good legal standard, in my opinion, because again, I'll go back. I feel like my job as a parent is to be educated and open enough with my children myself to discuss issues with them when they come across them, because I'm never gonna keep it away from them. We're big fans of the Hear No Evil, See No Evil, Speak No Evil monkeys in this house. It's one of our favorite little art pieces, and I don't believe for half a second that not seeing and not hearing is going to keep them from doing that. Like it's a joke to me. Like, that's why I find the art piece so fascinating, because of how it to me, it makes fun of this whole, it's all nature, or it's all nurture rather. I'm sorry. It's not all nurture. It's nurture and nature. It's a combination of the two. And we as parents, I feel like that's our responsibility to help our children navigate that. And to help them navigate that is to not hide them from that, but rather help them understand what it is when it's in front of them, and then how we can help mold their views on it against other people trying to mold their views on it. That's our job as parents, is to be that the last authority figure above all others. And I think that's one of the things that, we talked about earlier. I think a lot of parents want the schools to do it for them.
But I agree with that. But then we have to realize, Seth, that there is a drip, drip, drip campaign. And children, a lot of times parents don't even know what their child has been exposed to at school. And sometimes the children don't know that they're being exposed to it. So, for instance, I was talking to the director of curriculum, she's the superintendent. I might get this title wrong. The superintendent of Alabama curriculum in the state schools. And she was talking about how now that teachers are pretty overwhelmed by how much content and even math word problems. How she had a teacher call her and said, my kids were doing...
I'm sorry. I know what you're talking about. I've seen the conversations on these 100%. So how does... If curriculum comes through the state board anyway, and the state board in Tennessee, at least, is a Republican body, for lack of a better word, how is it getting in the first place? Like, that's part I don't understand. Like, if for the sake of conversation, if we're going to say that they're sneaking in some pornography, for lack of a better word, into a math word problem, the state buys the books. The state's buying this material. Who are they buying this material from? I would assume that Scholastic or whoever, it's a multi-billion-dollar contract across multiple states that they're doing. I would assume that when we're taking on this curriculum, we should see it instead of it already getting here before we freak out about it.
So as I was talking to her about this, I was asking the exact same question you just asked, Seth, and I go, I don't understand, because she seemed to be a very conservative thinking superintendent of curriculum, and she said it doesn't matter what we do. So, for instance, she goes, how much time does someone literally have? So she was looking, she had some kindergarten, first, second graders that were wanting to replenish their library in their classroom. So she was trying to look at a good alternative to buy these little sets to replenish some libraries in the classroom. And so K through 3. So she said she found this series. It was like Heroes of America. They had sample pages in the guide that she orders from. It looked good. It was like soldiers and first responders and just different people that did heroic things in our America. So she ordered the first set, and it came to her. She goes, and I want to probably the few, because I just make the time. It takes me forever, but I literally flipped through every page. So when I got the first set, I just picked the first book out, and it was the soldiers, whatever it was. She goes, and I just flipped it open, and it just fell open to the middle. And that page was, and some people would be happy about this, but the ad that she ordered from was misleading, because it was a colonel, and they were identifying him as a hero because he came out against pressure and came out that he was gay, homosexual in the military, and it was a K through 3 reading, but his heroic action of, coming out that he was gay. And so you might go, well, that's reality and that's where we are. It's just that it seems to never stop today. And so
I get, okay.
That's why I believe in school choice. It's like, okay, so probably at this point.
But
But why? I didn't study the sexual orientation of people admission, when I was in K through 3.
But that's an admission from this Alabama lady that she doesn't do her job, and that furthermore, that's an admission that none of them do their jobs. That they.
Well, she did do it. She looked at it when it got there, but first she had to order it, and the ad in the curriculum.
So, but I don't doubt them. Oh, there's so much more to this. We don't have time for it.
I know.
But I mean, like there. I don't believe for a second that it isn't possible that we could have multiple providers of generic material for a classroom that a curriculum instructor could go through and order the books that are at least amorphous, if not, leaning one way or the other. I don't buy that. I get it. I don't doubt that some liberal publishers out there squeezing stuff in where they can. But I mean, I'd pull it off if that's the case. I'd pull it off the shelf, send it back, and say, give us our money back.
Right.
And if the market works like Republicans say it works, then somebody should come along and make a book series that actually makes sense that school systems are going to buy. And so if the argument is that the book series don't exist, then that's a whole separate economics conversation that doesn't make sense. But I don't know. I see where you're at, and I'll repeat my prior. It's like I would say it's our obligation as parents to address that topic with their kids when it happens. I don't know. Personally, I think you agree with me. I think the state sucks at almost everything they do. So I don't disagree with things that take authorities and structures out of the state because they can't suck at it if they don't do it. Which is why this is why I go all over the place I'm so completely amorphous on the school choice conversation, because I don't know that there's no way in the history of time that if the state is writing the check, that they're not going to insist it somewhere in the process. And so eventually, to me personally, the only solution is the state stops. They just stop, and then they stop taking our tax dollars for it. But they won't do that either. It's not like they're going to give us a tax break when they take our school systems away. So that's my problem here. Is the reality is at some point the school system, or at some point the state is going to insist, because it's their money, it's tax expended dollars. Which as a conservative, that's what if we're going to give you money, we want you to do it in a way we want oversight on it. That's a normal thing to expect. Like that's but the only real solution to me is that we take the state out of schools. And if we take the state out of schools, we're just going to have to pay out of pocket, but we're going to be all broker for it in the process, because we're never getting our tax money back. We know that. Anyway,
we wouldn't.
Woo, we got fun and exciting.
I know, and yeah.
I need one more cup of coffee to get this day started. No, I don't. I think I'm ready, rocking and rolling and ready to go. Monica, it was great to meet you. I had a really good time. If you want to plug your website or anything like that real quick, and we'll call it a show.
All right. Well, yes, it's Monica Irvine. So Irvine is spelt like Irvine with an E on the end. So Monica and then IRV as in Victor, INE.com to learn more about me and my campaign. And I'm excited to represent all of District 6. Yes, I am conservative. I am a Republican. I want to be transparent about who I am and what I stand for. But I know that my job is to represent District 6, to listen to District 6, and what's important to District 6 is important to me, and I look forward to continuing to learn what those things are. So, Seth, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, and we'll talk to everybody later. That is an early morning interview with Monica Irvine, everybody. Monica Irvine, Irvin with an E, whatever. MonicaIrvine.com. That's Irvine, MonicaIrvine.com. You can go there for more information about her. And early voting starts in exactly 1 month. You should vote for somebody in the primary. You should vote for somebody that's included in the Knox County General. So anyway, we're almost interviewing at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I got another cup of coffee to drink, and then I got to go do some other work today. But we appreciate everybody listening. We appreciate Monica for coming out. If you listened to the Big Show this week, you would have assumed that I might have gotten along with her. But, I think she has conviction in her views, and I can disagree with them all I want, but she has that conviction, and we're going to vote for somebody. So check her out. Check out Becky Massey and check out Dominica here coming up in the general. So we'll talk more and we'll get those in here for interviews as well. almostagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Favorite podcast provider, like, friend, share, follow, all those good things. And text us to your friends. Text us to your enemies. I don't care. Text us to somebody. It's the easiest way to make sure they see it. Bye.